My name is Lindsey Gray, and I teach 5th grade for the Sioux Falls School District at All City Elementary. The pandemic has brought both struggles and joys throughout teaching. It is something that I never thought I would experience, but every step of it has been really memorable along the way. The biggest struggle was back in March of 2020 when we found out on a Friday afternoon that we were not coming back. We found out through a notification from the governor. We had not yet heard from the school, and so I just remember that day being so full of uncertainty. Unfortunately, we were not even able to tell our students that we wouldn't be back on Monday. I remember you always hear about people who can remember where they were at points in time, and I remember I was at the grocery store on a Friday. It was about 4:20, and that's when we got the phone call, and I remember my heart just plummeting and thinking I sent home 27 students that I could potentially not see again for the rest of their lives. That was a huge struggle and something that I really had to look to my faith and know that it would be okay and that God would provide not only for me, but also for them and their families. At the time, I was working at a school that was very high poverty, very high free and reduced lunch. And so immediately I would think of the struggles they would have without getting lunch a hot lunch at school, but also breakfast at school. And just thinking about going into a long weekend and that uncertainty, and then a week turned into 2 weeks, turned into a whole quarter. So there were definitely struggles, not only for myself, but also for my students and their families. One of the biggest struggles was just connectivity. So many kids now rely on the social emotional connection that they get from their teacher at school, whether that's a smile through the hallway, a wink in the hallway, a handshake, a hug as they're leaving. And digitally, we couldn't do any of those things. So we really had to, as teachers, think of how we could create different types of relationships through a screen. Another thing that I think was really, really difficult for myself and my students was that loss of social connection with peers. A lot of them were distanced from peers, not only physically, but also socially during that time. And I would just tell them whenever we would meet at our Zoom calls to just say, well, find things that you enjoy to do, find things that bring you joy, find ways to help your family, find ways to help your grandmother or your grandpa or whoever you can during this time. But that was a part that, for me, being a teacher and relying on a lot of those social connectivities, I really struggled being home. For about 2 to 3 weeks, my husband was also home with me, and in our 1-bedroom place, it was a little tight for a while, so we definitely had to find ways that we could not only interact with each other, but then also where we would have some separate times like we normally do throughout the day. So that some of those struggles personally is where I really leaned into my faith, and I would read through different passages of the Bible, or one of my coworkers would share like a little Instagram post every day that had a Bible verse on it that kind of kept us going and talked about our struggles, because to be quite honest, there was no one who was struggling with the same thing I was. Everyone had different struggles, and some things I excelled at, others didn't, and then where I struggled, some others excelled. But in that, there were also huge moments of joy. As a 5th grade teacher, I get to know my students intensely, and I know them personally, socially, academically, but it really became a joyous time for me to get to know their families too. So all of a sudden on a Zoom call, you'd see a puppy walk by. Oh, what's your dog's name? I didn't know you had a dog. Or all of a sudden, I would see students that I had previously had who were in 7th, 8th, 9th grade. They'd join the Zoom calls, or younger brothers and sisters. So it was a really also a joyous time where I felt like I got to connect with a lot of my families on a more intimate level than I do just in a school day setting. And one thing that was such a blessing was that was able to carry over into the next year. When we all returned, it was such a joyous celebration to be able to welcome kids into your classroom that had sat empty for months and months and months. And regardless of being behind masks or dividers, you could feel the joy that was in the room. You could see it in their eyes, and to be able to already have some of those connections with students because you had older siblings was really powerful. So that was kind of when you get some of those full circle moments of there was great times of struggle, but such joyous times that if you didn't take time to celebrate that, you could have gone to really dark places throughout our distance learning. Yeah, I'd say throughout the distance learning and then also that following year, there were definitely really hard things that stand out to me. One of them first being in 5th grade, you learn the US standard algorithm for multiplication and division, and I would get parents that would tell me, your answer key is wrong. My cell phone says this. So I spent a lot of time also educating families and parents on remainders and things like that. But I think one of the most difficult things for me was to not have that personal connection with families. And there definitely were families that really stepped up, and a lot of my families at the time were working at Smithfield. And so I found myself having erratic work hours. So if they got home from a shift late at night, I would be on a Google call at 10 or 11 helping them help their children through. I really morphed from a 8 to 4 on Monday through Friday to 24/7 on call, answering phone calls. But with that struggle came so much joy to be able to see families and to be able to have them call on you at any time of day was really powerful for relationships. And so I think the most joyous thing that came out of it, one of my biggest memories was I had finally, when we had come to school the next fall, I had a sibling in one of my classes and I had never met their parents before. And it was so joyous to see them walk into a conference or walk in for the open house and to just say, I've seen you on the screen. Hi, I'm Mrs. Gray. So those moments were really, really joyous when you could see the connections that you had made digitally come to fruition in life. Those are very memorable times. There are many ways that my faith has both challenged and strengthened me in the last 24 months. I think some of my most challenging times were those long weekends where you hadn't heard from a student or a family in 4, 5, 6 days, and you were hoping they were okay. You were wondering, just kind of had to put your faith in God and know that things were going to be okay, and really help yourself find some boundaries of these are things I can control and these are things I can't control. And I found myself just incessantly praying about the things that I couldn't control and hoping that God would answer my prayers, and even if they weren't for me, but for those families that I worked with. But there were also some incredible ways that my faith was so strengthened. To be able to have so much time devoted to self-reflection was really powerful for me. I found myself reflecting at odd times of the day that I wouldn't normally have time for. So maybe 10:15 between a Zoom call, or at 3:30 when I would normally be in collaborations or things with others. I found myself alone, and I found myself just really reflecting on what God had provided for me and for my family. Another thing that really strengthened my faith was my relationship with my husband. We were freshly married. We got married during the pandemic, and so that was really powerful to be able to spend that much intimate, close time together and to really find things that we shared in common, to find different TV series we like to write, same books that we like to read about. And so I think some of that was really, really powerful. And for us, we loved watching First Lutheran on YouTube, and so to be able to sit on the couch and to kind of talk through things, you felt a little bit more comfortable saying, oh, well, what did you think about this part during the sermon than you would feel sitting in a pew talking about it. So we would find ourselves just talking about different things throughout the day, not necessarily just when we're here physically in person. So some of those things really helped to strengthen my faith and a lot of the relationships that I have too.